Alright, so welcome to this video. We're going to go to discuss section 3.2 and we're going to be looking at synthetic division. So we're just going to dive right into example 1, and again I'll kind of just show you how we divide synthetically and then we'll build up from there. So we're asked to divide this polynomial here. We have x to the 6th minus 3x to the 4th plus 2x cubed, and again minus all this other junk here. And we want to divide this stuff here by x plus 2. And so a few things that I'm just going to point out. For example, this right here, this x squared minus 3x to the 4th plus 2x cubed, all this stuff in the numerator, we call this our dividend. And we usually call this our function. That is the function that we are trying to divide, so we call that fx. And what we're trying to divide by is x plus 2, and this is known as our divisor. This is known as our divisor, and we usually it's usually written in the form of x minus k. That's usually how it's written. And the way we do this is, well, we start off by first looking at what we're dividing by. So I always mention that you want to kind of look at this number here. And notice that it's x plus 2. It kind of looks like this, x minus k, but we don't have a minus sign, we have a plus sign. But that's okay. I can think about it as x minus a negative 2, since two negatives make a positive. And so if you think about this, our k value is just going to be the opposite of whatever this number is right here. So if this is a positive 2, then again our k is going to be a negative 2, and that's kind of what we're going to use to help us divide this problem out. And so the way we're going to set this up is usually I tell the students that we're going to make this little, let's see, let me make a straight line here. So I usually like to make these little bars here just to kind of organize my synthetic division. And so I usually make, that looks pretty straight. Okay, so I'm going to make this weird looking L shape, and I'll explain to you how we're going to use this in just a bit. And what I'm going to do is look at my numerator, and all the coefficients of the numerator are going to be put in this first row right here. And so what I mean by that is, for example, the coefficient here, well, the coefficient, the number in front, is just a 1, so we're going to have 1 there. Now here's the other thing I need to also watch out for. The highest power that I have in the numerator is a 6. So that means that I have to have every power after 6 until 0. So I have to have the power of 6, the power of 5, the power of 4, the power of 3, 2, 1, and 0. And if I look at this, I have 6, I have 4, I have 3, I have 2, I have 1, and I have 0. But I'm missing a power, and that power should be here. It is a 5. So what we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to insert a 0x to the 5th power to kind of take care of that missing power. And that would be the next coefficient that I would use here. So it would be a 0. And then again, the power of 4 would be next. Well, the power of 4 has a coefficient of a negative 3. The power of 3 has a coefficient of 2. The power of 2 has a coefficient of negative 6. The power of 1 has a coefficient of negative 5. And then finally, the power of 0, in other words, there's no x here, has just the number 3. And what I always tell the students to do, or what I advise you to do, is just kind of put a box off on this number. So this last little area, just have a little section off there. That's going to come in handy later on, just to kind of help us organize our numbers in just a bit. Then we go ahead and we take our k value. So k was negative 2. And that negative 2, I'm going to place it outside of this L-shaped box that I have here. And so here is the process. We're now going to divide using this technique called synthetic division. And so what we're going to go ahead and do is the first step is to drop down this 1 here. So I'm going to drop down the 1. Next thing I want to do is multiply 1 times negative 2. 1 times negative 2 is negative 2. And then I just combine, so 0 plus a negative 2. Well, 0 plus negative 2 is just negative 2. And then again, I multiply negative 2 times negative 2, I get positive 4. And then again, I just add and keep doing the same thing over and over. So negative 3 plus 4 gives us, let's see, 1. And then 1 times negative 2, so 1 times negative 2, that is just negative 2. And then 2 plus negative 2, that's just 0. And 0 times negative 2, 0 times negative 2 is just 0. Negative 6 plus 0 is negative 6. Again, negative 6 times negative 2, that is a positive 12. And then negative 5 plus 12. So negative 5 plus 12, this part right here gives me a 7. 7 times negative 2 is going to give me a negative 14. And then finally I end up with a negative 11 with 3 plus negative 14. And so that's pretty much it. We've already divided this polynomial. And so now what I'm just going to tell you is just how do you get your answer? How do you write your answer from here? And so it's pretty straightforward. This part right here, so this whole part right here without this last number, we call this the quotient. So this is the quotient. And it's usually defined to be q of x. We just call that q of x for quotient. And then this number that you see here, this negative 11, is known as the remainder. So this is what is left over. And this, since it's just the remainder, we usually just call this r. Or sometimes we'll call this r of x. Again, it doesn't really matter, but we'll just call this r for remainder. So we're just going to call this r. Okay, so the question is, well, how do you write your final answer? Well, the way we're going to write our final answer is we're going to write there's two ways actually. We can write it as the quotient plus the remainder over the divisor. So that's one way that we saw in class how we could write our answer. The other way that we can write our answer, actually let me go ahead and just circle this and then move it over really quick. The other way that we can write our answer is as follows. So we could say, okay, well, we have the quotient, so it's the quotient times our divisor. Now if we think about our divisor, the divisor was this x minus k stuff right here. So it was this x minus k, that is our divisor. So I'm just going to write it as x minus k, or again whatever our divisor is. In fact, let me just go ahead and write it as the divisor because I don't want the x minus k to confuse you if you don't see an x minus k anywhere. So this is just going to be our quotient times our divisor plus our remainder. Now what this is going to do is this is going to equal f of x. And this over here does not equal f of x. This one equals f of x over your divisor, d of x. And we'll just call d of x the divisor. And I'll label that up here. d of x is our divisor. So again, we have different ways to represent our answer here. Now one thing that I do want to point out is that we started off with the highest power in the numerator was a 6. And we divided by a power of 1. So what that's going to do is drop down the power by 1. So if we look at our quotient, instead of, so if I look at this first number, instead of 1x to the 6th power, because that's what we started off with, we're knocking this down by a power of 1. So this is going to be x to the 5th power. This one would be x to the 4th, x to the 3rd, x squared, and then x. Alright, so there we go. So there is our quotient. And what I want to do is now just try writing our final answer out in both forms. So we'll look at this first form here to the left. So we have the quotient, that is x to the 5th minus 2x to the 4th plus x cubed plus 0x squared minus 6x plus 7. That's the quotient part. And again, that just came from here. I'm just reading it from there. Then we're going to have plus the remainder. Well, the remainder for us was negative 11. And again, our divisor our divisor is, what were we dividing by? Well, we were dividing this whole problem by x plus 2. In fact, x plus 2 is the divisor. And so we're going to divide this by x plus 2. And so this would be one way to go ahead and represent our answer. Some questions on your homework will ask you to write it in this format, and then other questions will ask you to write it in this other format. And so we're going to practice writing it like this as well. So again, another way to represent this would be, okay, well, the quotient was, let's see, x to the fifth. So x to the fifth minus 2x to the fourth plus 1x cubed plus 0x squared minus 6x plus 7. So there is our quotient. And we're going to go ahead and multiply that by the divisor. Well, the divisor again was what we divided by, which was x plus 2. Okay, so there's the x plus 2. And then again, plus our remainder. So plus our remainder. So plus negative 11. Now you could write it like this. We could just put plus negative 11. That's fine. But you might just see it written like this instead. Instead of plus negative 11, you just might see it as minus 11 since the remainder is negative. And again, this would be another way on representing the answer, and it's just a matter of reading the directions very carefully and just looking at how they want the final answer written. But this is kind of the overall process on how to divide synthetically, or how to use synthetic division. In the next example, we'll talk about another synthetic division problem. So stay tuned for the next video. We'll go ahead and discuss more synthetic division examples, and we'll even look at some more not complicated, but more challenging examples where we bring in some complex numbers. So stay tuned.